Hello again everyone, I'm Daniel the Cross Cultural Nerd here with another Pathfinder 2nd Edition video for you today, finally. This took way longer to write for than I had hoped since I've had a very busy summer. Today we're talking about races. Well, not races. Pathfinder 2nd Edition calls them ancestries, and what other systems call sub-races are called heritages here. As I said in my character creation tutorial, there are no fewer than 36 ancestries for player characters in all published materials, as recorded in the excellent website Archives of Nethys. Each ancestry also has several heritages, and as of the new Rage of Elements sourcebook, there are 18 heritages currently that can be applied to almost any ancestry. This is going to be one of my longer RPG videos with over 13,000 words, so I'm going to summarize as much as I can. In this video, I'm going to talk about the most basic traits of each ancestry and give the gist of each ancestry's heritages. As ancestry feats number in the hundreds, I'll just put links to the relevant pages in the description down below. Even with the summarizing, I'm expecting this to take well over an hour, so if there's anything in particular that interests you, I'll put timestamps also in the description below, so you can go right to what you actually care about. So let's get started. Strap yourselves in, folks. This is a long one. We'll go in order of how each ancestry is presented in its respective book, and in order of publication. Ancestries split between source books will be covered in order of their first source book as cited on Archives of Nethys. We'll start with the core ancestries. Dwarves are much like their counterparts in many other systems. They often favor mountains and citadels, have a strong sense of honor, and make firm allies once their trust is hard-earned. All dwarves get 10 HP to their total health and have a speed of 20 feet. They have boosts to Constitution, Wisdom, and a free boost with an ability flaw in Charisma. They can speak Common and Dwarvish, they have Dark Vision, and by default have a clan dagger given to them at birth. There are 9 dwarf heritages in the core rulebook, the character guide, and High Helm, which was just released in late June of this year. This is tied with the Azarketi for second most heritages of any ancestry behind the Leshy. Ancient blooded dwarves are good at saving versus magical effects. Anvil dwarves are extra good at crafting in 2 different specialties. Death Warden dwarves are traditionally tomb guardians who are good at resisting necromancy. Elemental Heart dwarves, traditionally from the Mwangi Expanse, can emit a burst of elemental energy, your choice of type, and hit those adjacent to them. Forged dwarves are naturally fire resistant. Forge Blessed dwarves can cast a first level spell favored by their family deity once per week. Oathkeeper dwarves are good at spotting lies and convincing others of their honesty, but find it difficult to effectively lie themselves. Rock dwarves are resistant to attempts to shove, trip, or otherwise knock them prone, and strong-blooded dwarves are naturally resistant to poison. Dwarf ancestry feats can improve heritage abilities, use of clan-associated items and lore, one's affinity with stone and fire, abilities related to regions of origin, armor and weapons, seeing through darkness, crafting, and more. Elves are not fey beings like in other mythoses, but trace their ancestry back to the planet Castrovel, second planet in Galarion's solar system, effectively making them alien in origin. In other ways, they are like elves in Lord of the Rings, D&D, etc., with grace, intelligence, charm, and a long life. They add 6 HP to their health total and move at a speed of 30 feet. They get boosts to dexterity, intelligence, and a free boost with a flaw in Constitution. They speak Common and Elven. They have low light vision, which lets them see in dim light, but not in total darkness. There are 7 elf heritages in the core rulebook and character guide. The ancient elf has lived a long time and gets a free feat to multiclass into another class. Arctic elves are naturally resistant to cold. Cavern elves get full dark vision. Desert elves are naturally resistant to fire and heat. Seer elves can innately cast and detect magic and are better than most at identifying magic and deciphering magical writing. Whisper elves are good at detecting undetected creatures by hearing, and woodland elves are good at climbing trees and foliage and at taking cover in forest terrain. Ancestry feats for elves tend to improve abilities gained from long life, use of elven weapons and lore, affinity for and resistance to magic, affinity for nature, mental abilities, elven nimbleness, and more. Gnomes are small, long-lived, enthusiastic humanoids originally from the First World. D&D players should think of the Feywild, who strive to experience new things constantly. While unconnected to the magical essence of the First World, new experiences help to stave off the bleaching, a gnome affliction that drains the color from them and sends them into a deep depression, survived by a select few known as bleachlings. Gnomes have small size and add 8 HP to their health total. They have a speed of 25 feet. They get boosts to Constitution, Charisma, and one free ability of their choice, as well as a fall to Strength. They speak Common, Gnomish, and Sylvan, and they can see in dim light with their low light vision. There are currently 6 Gnome heritages, all in the core rulebook. The Chameleon Gnome can change the color of their hair and skin and even blend in with their surroundings to an extent. The Fey-touched Gnome gains the Fey type in addition to the Gnome and Humanoid types, and can get an innate cantrip of primal magic that can be changed once per day if you like. The Sensate Gnome has incredible senses, especially smell, and can use imprecise scent within 30 feet to find an undetected creature. Umbral Gnomes can see in the dark. Vivacious Gnomes are resistant to negative damage and are less affected by the Doomed condition. And Wellspring Gnomes get an innate cantrip that's arcane, divine, or occult rather than primal, and any other innate spells come from what you pick. Ancestry feats for Gnomes tend to improve knowledge abilities, Gnomish weapons and lore, affinity with animals, magic use, especially with illusions and fey magic, avoiding danger without having to kill someone, and more. Goblins are small creatures with green or grayish skin, wide pointy ears, and pointy teeth. They have a reputation for recklessness, enthusiasm, a love of songs and fire, and a hatred of dogs and horses, but of course many don't fit that stereotype either. They're also shorter lived than most. They add 6 HP to their health total, are small sized, and have a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to Dexterity, Charisma, and 1 free boost to another ability, and a flaw to Wisdom. They can speak Common and Goblin at the least, and they can see in the dark. Currently, there are 7 Goblin heritages in the core rulebook and character guide. The Charhide Goblin is fire resistant and can get rid of persistent fire damage more easily. Iron Gut Goblins can survive on food most consider spoiled, can eat and drink while sickened, and can more easily resist sickening and other afflictions resulting from something ingested. Razor Tooth Goblins can attack with a bite. Snow Goblins are resistant to cold. Tailed Goblins have tails that give them bonuses to climb surfaces and trip creatures. Tree Dweller Goblins are great at sneaking, subsisting, and covering treks in forest and jungle. And Unbreakable Goblins take half the falling damage of everyone else and get more HP added to their total. Ancestry feats for Goblins tend to improve abilities of specific heritages, Goblin weapons and lore, personal resilience, affinity for fire, performance abilities, making use of scrap, riding wolves and goblin dogs, avoiding danger, teamwork, and more. Halflings are essentially hobbits. They're also small in size and have great wanderlust, humor, curiosity, luck, bravado, and a love of comfort in their home life. They add 6 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to Dexterity, Wisdom, and 1 free ability, and a fall to Strength. They at least speak Common and Halfling. They have keen eyes that let them spot hidden or undetected creatures more easily than others. As I mentioned in our character creation tutorial, Halflings currently have 7 heritages in the core rulebook, the character guide, and the advanced player's guide. Gutsy Halflings are good at resisting fear. Hillock Halflings are good at gaining health from rest and medicine. Jinxed Halflings are never lucky, but they can curse a creature to be clumsy. Nomadic Halflings are great with languages. Observant Halflings are good at passive observation. Twilight Halflings can see in low light, and Wildwood Halflings are great at maneuvering around trees and other plants. Halfling ancestry feats tend to improve one's luck, secrecy, halfling weapons and lore, observation, escape abilities, maneuvering around larger creatures, teamwork abilities, and more. Humans are the most numerous ancestry in Pathfinder's world of Golarion, though this may vary in other worlds. They are one of the most versatile and can be tailored towards a huge variety of builds even by Pathfinder standards. They add 8 HP to their health total, have a speed of 25 feet, and gain 2 free ability boosts and no flaws. At the very least, they speak Common. There are just 3 human heritages in the core rulebook and character guide. Skilled humans become trained and later expert in one skill of their choice. Versatile halflings get a free general feat. Winter-touched humans are cold resistant. As commonly as they intermarry with others, there are also heritages for half-elves and half-orcs. Half-elves gain the elf and half-elf traits and can pick ancestry feats from the elf and half-elf feat list, as well as their human feat list. Half-orcs gain the orc and half-orc traits and can pick ancestry feats from the orc and half-orc feat lists, as well as those for humans. Both also get low light vision. It should be noted that while the default for half-elf and half-orc is also half-human, a DM can work with you to change the human side into something else. It doesn't take much to make a character of elven and dwarven ancestry, or orcish and halfling ancestry, and just pick from the relevant ancestry feat lists. Human ancestry feats tend to improve abilities from one's ethnicity or heritage, teamwork, versatility, skill mastery, resilience, and more, largely because humans are almost everywhere on Golarion. Half-elves can use human and elf feats, but specifically, half-elf feats enhance one side or another, interacting with people, inspiring others, and more. Half-orcs can use human and orc feats, but specifically half-orc feats enhance interacting with marginalized people, getting people to underestimate you, and dark vision. The character guide adds 3 ancestries: Hobgoblins, Leshies, and Lizardfolk. Hobgoblins are as tall as humans with shorter legs and longer arms, but like their goblin kin, they're bald and have pointed teeth and red eyes, but with gray or steel blue skin similar to a frost goblin. Their society is often very militaristic, with even civilian life having great discipline and an army-like hierarchical structure. They're also very pragmatic, with sentiment giving way to efficiency and practicality. Hobgoblins add 8 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They get ability boosts in Constitution, Intelligence, and another free boost of your choice, and a flaw in Wisdom. They speak Common and Goblin and are able to see in the dark. The character guide and ancestry guide have 7 Hobgoblin heritages. Elfbane Hobgoblins are more resistant to magic. Runt Boss Hobgoblins are a little smaller, but are good at coercing multiple people, especially goblins, to do your will. Shortshanks Hobgoblins have longer torsos and a lower center of gravity, which makes them better at riding and climbing. Smokeworker Hobgoblins have fire resistance and are good at targeting creatures only concealed by smoke. Steelskin Hobgoblins more easily recover from persistent physical energy and poison damage. Warmarch Hobgoblins can hustle longer than others and subsist in the wilderness in areas where food is scarce. And Warren-bred Hobgoblins are used to underground life and are more effective at squeezing through tight spaces and sensing undetected creatures by hearing. Ancestry feats for Hobgoblins tended to improve Hobgoblin weapons and lore, resilience and composure, assisting allies, debuffing foes, stealth, alchemy, other military tactics, and more. Leshies are nature spirits given physical form by masters of primal magic. They stand around 3 feet tall and are extremely varied in appearance, looking like vaguely humanoid forms of whatever plant or fungal matter was used to create them. They might guard a certain natural location or go out traveling to further their creator's goals or encourage natural cooperation. Tiny varieties often act as familiars to druids or other primal mages. They add 8 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They have a free boost along with boosts in Constitution and Wisdom, but they have a flaw in Intelligence. They speak Common and Sylvan. They can see well in dim light, and they can gain nourishment in much the same way as other plants or fungi, through photosynthesis, absorbing minerals, or scavenging decaying matter. Those that primarily rely on photosynthesis begin to starve after a week without sunlight. There are a whopping 10 Leshy heritages from the Character Guide, Ancestry Guide, and the Quest for the Frozen Flame Adventure Path. Cactus Leshies have spines they can use as natural weapons. Fruit Leshies produce a newly ripened fruit each day that can provide healing to one creature if eaten within an hour of picking it. Fungus Leshies see in darkness and have the fungus trait instead of the plant trait. Gourd Leshies have a large gourd for a skull that can be used to store up to 1 bulk of objects inside, where it's tougher to steal, and if only 1 object is stored, it can be drawn quickly and used in the same action. Leaf Leshies are made from natural foliage and take no damage from falling, no matter how long the fall. Lotus Leshies can effectively walk on water, but must use some acrobatics to do so on water that is moving. Pine Leshies exude a sticky sap that let them better climb and hang onto their weapons. Root Leshies are hardier than others, can go double the time without sun before starting to starve, and are more resistant to attempts to move them or knock them prone. Seaweed Leshies can swim well and breathe underwater, even though they're a tad slower on land. And Vine Leshies are extra effective climbers and don't even need any hands-free to climb. Ancestry feats for Leshies tend to improve Leshy lore, natural weapons and protections, stealth, connection with nature, luck, healing, innate primal magic, and more. Lizardfolk, or Iroxi as they call themselves, are humanoid reptiles who excel in the wilderness, especially around water. Coloration can range from natural camouflage to bright colors. They venerate their ancestors and look to the stars for guidance. They act patiently and pragmatically. Their history and oral traditions extend back for millennia. Lizardfolk add 8 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They have a boost in strength and wisdom and a free boost in another ability with a flaw in intelligence. They speak the Common and Iruxi languages. They can hold their breath for far, far longer than almost any other ancestry and have natural weapons in the form of claws. There are 7 Lizardfolk heritages in the Character Guide and Ancestry Guide. Cliff-scale Lizardfolk are excellent climbers like geckos to the point that they can fight while climbing and don't need hands-free to climb as long as they're not wearing footwear. Cloud Leaper Lizardfolk have flaps of skin along their limbs that slow falls enough to avoid damage. Frilled Lizardfolk can intimidate creatures with a neck frill. Sandstrider Lizardfolk can go much longer without food and water and are fire-resistant, though they are vulnerable to cold environments. Unseen Lizardfolk can change your skin color like a chameleon and are stealthier when their color matches their environment. The most common variety, the Wetlander Lizardfolk, are really good swimmers, and the Woodstalker Lizardfolk excel at sneaking and taking cover in forest and jungle. Lizardfolk ancestry feats tend to improve Lizardfolk lore and natural weapons, abilities of specific heritages, affinity with other reptiles, ancestral magic using bones, studying the heavens, and more. The Adventure Path Extinction Curse, specifically Part 3, Life's-Long Shadows, added the Shoony ancestry. Shoonies are primarily concentrated around the city of Absalom and the Isle of Kortos in Galarion, and look a little bit like humanoid halfling-sized pugs or bulldogs, and they have many of the same mannerisms, like panting and wagging one's tail. They have a reputation for hospitality, optimism, and a desire to do the right thing. They are also typically pacifistic, though when push comes to shove, they will fight to protect their homes and those they care about. They add 6 HP to their health total and have a speed of 25 feet. They have boosts in dexterity, charisma, and another ability of their choice, and a flaw in constitution. Their base languages are Common and Shoony. They can see well in dim light, and their blunt snouts make them much more resistant to inhaled and olfactory threats. There are only 4 Shoony heritages. Bloodhound Shoonies have a greater sense of smell within 30 feet, can locate a creature within range by smell, and can better track those they've smelled before. Fish Seeker Shoonies have better reflexes for grabbing an edge during a fall or for avoiding other people's attempts to disarm them. Paddler Shoonies are experts at traversing bogs and are better swimmers than most. And Thick Coat Shoonies come from colder regions and are more resistant to cold. Shoony ancestry feats tend to improve Shoony lore, use of improvised weapons, moving around larger creatures, building, digging, and interacting with and helping others. The Advanced Player's Guide adds 5 ancestries: Catfolk, Kobold, Orc, Ratfolk, and Tengu, along with several versatile heritages I will go into much later. Catfolk, or Amaroons, are humanoid felines comparable to the Tabaxi of D&D or the Khajiit of Elder Scrolls. Catfolk are typically curious, brave, and social people who like learning new stuff and providing for those that they care about. They add 8 HP to their health total and have a speed of 25 feet. They get boosts to dexterity, charisma, and another ability of their choice, and a flaw in wisdom. At the least, they speak the Common and Amaroon languages. They can see well in dim light, and by usually landing on their feet, they only take half the normal falling damage and don't land prone. There are 8 Catfolk heritages in the Advanced Player's Guide and the Ancestry Guide. Clawed Catfolk get extra potent claws that can do damage in a fight. Flexible Catfolk are good at escaping being restrained and at squeezing through tight spaces. Hunting Catfolk can locate a creature within range by smell, and are better at tracking something if they smelled it before. Jungle Catfolk are great at moving through forest undergrowth. Liminal Catfolk are knowledgeable about extraplanar creatures and can cast Detect Magic as an innate cantrip. 9 Lives Catfolk aren't brought as close to death if a critical hit brings them low. Sharp-eared Catfolk can locate a creature within range by sharp hearing and can quickly point it out to their allies. And Winter Catfolk are resistant to cold with their long fur. Catfolk ancestry feats tend to improve Catfolk weapons, claws and teeth, and lore, reflexes and agility, benefits of quick naps, stealth, avoiding death, and more. Kobolds are slender, reptilian humanoids of draconic ancestry and varying coloration, standing about the size of halflings. They have at least one draconic feature, like horns, sharp teeth, wings, draconic breath, or some other trait, and their heads are a bit bigger in relation to their body than those in D&D. They're typically quite crafty, especially with snares. Often they'll feign meekness around stronger creatures to avoid being a target, and then make their move when they have the advantage. But they fit well with a group, whether in a warren or an adventuring party. They add 6 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to dexterity, charisma, and another ability of their choice, and a flaw to constitution. Their base languages are Common and Draconic. They see well in the dark, and each kobold has a draconic exemplar to which they trace their ancestry, affecting aspects of any breath weapon or other draconic ability that they may have. There are 7 kobold heritages in the Advanced Player's Guide and the Ancestry Guide. Cave climber kobolds are extremely sure climbers and can even leave their hands free while climbing to fight. Cavern kobolds can climb faster than most and are really good at squeezing through tight spaces. Dragon-scaled kobolds have the same kind of damage resistance as their draconic exemplar. Spell-scaled kobolds are trained in arcane magic and get an innate arcane cantrip. Strongjaw kobolds, no relation to Grog, get a bite attack. Tunnel flood kobolds are good swimmers, and venom-tail kobolds can secrete venom from a tail spur onto a weapon at least once daily and deal persistent poison damage. Kobold ancestry feats tend to improve kobold lore and weapons, snare use, benefits of draconic heritage, teamwork, getting foes to underestimate you, avoiding danger, stealth, fighting in close quarters and difficult terrain, winged flight, and more. Orcs, no relation to Paizo's new license, are tall and strong with rough skin and thick bones befitting of people who have seen lots of conflict. Historically, they clashed many times with dwarves and other surrounding peoples, but that doesn't mean that they're only suited for combat. They're typically green or gray in coloration. Orcs take pride in the hardships that they survive and the scars they've gained, seek glory, and face pain with stoicism. They do have some distrust of magic, with exceptions for certain divine and primal magic, and necromancy is a heinous taboo for them. They add 10 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They get a strength boost and a free boost and no flaws. Their base languages are Common and Orcish, and they see well in the darkness. The Advanced Player's Guide and Ancestry Guide have a total of 7 orc heritages. Badlands orcs can hustle for double the time and are more resistant to environmental heat. Battle-ready orcs are trained in intimidation and get the skill feat Intimidating Glare, which lets you intimidate people with just a look. And it is not bound by language. Deep orcs gain the Combat Climber skill feat, which lets you fight better while climbing, and the Terrain Expertise feat for underground terrain, letting you navigate better. Grave orcs have survived necromantic energy that should have killed them. They have resistance to necrotic damage and have better saves against necromantic effects. Hold-scarred orcs are ritually scarred or tattooed. They get 12 HP from Ancestry instead of 10, and get the Die Hard feat, which makes it so you don't succumb to death quite so easily. Rainfall orcs from rainforests are better at climbing, swimming, and resisting diseases, and winter orcs are trained in survival and are more resistant to environmental cold. Orc ancestry feats typically improve orc lore and weapons, tusks, combat, natural ferocity and resilience, cultural aspects like superstitions and war masks, bonding with companion beasts, and more. Ratfolk, or Isoki, are halfling-sized humanoid mice. They often live in close quarters with many others and have strong bonds with their family, community, and friends. They prioritize taking care of their own over issues of morality. As they have a history of being discriminated against, they're always on the watch for threats, but they're eager to befriend those who don't judge them solely on appearance. Ratfolk add 6 HP to their hit point total and have a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to dexterity, intelligence, and a free boost, and a flaw to strength. Their base languages are Common and Isoki, and they can see well in low light. The Advanced Player's Guide and Ancestry Guide have 7 Ratfolk heritages. Deep rats are from deeper underground and can see in the dark. Desert rats, with their leaner builds and shorter fur, are better at resisting heat, can go much longer without food or water, and can run faster on all fours, but they are more susceptible to cold. Long snout rats can sense creatures and objects by smell. Sewer rats are immune to the filth fever disease and recover more easily from disease or poison. Shadow rats, with their dark fur and slightly unnatural look, intimidate people and especially animals more easily, though animals are naturally unfriendlier to them. Snow rats have thick fur and resist cold more easily, and finally, tunnel rats have smaller bones that let them squeeze through tight spaces more easily. Ratfolk ancestry feats tend to improve Ratfolk lore and use of the natural incisors that they have, affinity with Ratfolk and other rodents, packing ability, close quarters situations, and more. Tengu originally come from the East Asia-inspired continent of Tianxia, but have spread all over. They look like humanoid ravens, and Tengu with wings are rare. They're very social and often live in extended communities. They respect tradition, but they are very good at adopting the cultural practices of the communities to which they move. They're often accomplished artisans, and they collect knowledge and various items in their travels. Many of them gravitate toward a maritime career. They add 6 HP to their hit point total and have a 25-foot speed. They have boosts to dexterity and another ability of their choice and no flaws. Their base languages are Common and Tengu. They can see in low light conditions and use their beak as a natural unarmed weapon, dealing piercing damage. The Advanced Player's Guide and Ancestry Guide have 7 Tengu heritages to pick from. Dog-toothed Tengu have their beak further aligned with teeth and deal even deadlier critical hits, and may deal slashing damage at higher levels. Jinxed Tengu are great at resisting curses, doom, and other misfortune. Mountain Keeper Tengu have a link to spirits and have Disrupt Undead as an innate cantrip cast at will. Skyborn Tengu take no falling damage due to their light bones and may potentially be able to fly with a certain feat at higher levels. Storm-tossed Tengu are resistant to electricity damage and can target creatures concealed by rain or fog. Taloned Tengu have talons that can also be used as natural weapons, dealing slashing damage, and Wave Diver Tengu are excellent swimmers. Tengu ancestry feats typically improve Tengu lore and weapons, specific heritage abilities, affinity with wind and lightning, luck manipulation, transformation, other bird-like traits, and more. The Azarketi Ancestry Web Supplement, an excerpt from the Absalom City of Lost Omens book, released later in 2021 as the Azarketi. Their ancestors were humans of the ancient land of Aslant, which was destroyed when their Algolthu overlords thought they weren't submissive enough, resulting in the catastrophe known as Earthfall. These people were then mutated to better serve the Algolthus as aquatic slaves, and the Azarketi at the present time in Pathfinder's storyline are spread throughout the seas, the city of Absalom, and many other settled lands near the water. They breathe through gills on the sides of their necks, and they are as varied in culture as most other humanoids. They add 8 HP to their health total and have a walking speed of 20 feet and a swim speed of 30 feet, reflecting their acclimation to water. They have boosts in Constitution, Charisma, and another ability of their choice, and a flaw in Wisdom. Their base languages are Common and Algolthu. They can see in low light. Most Azarketi must be submerged in water in order to rehydrate at least once every 24 hours, or else their gills start hurting, their skin starts to crack, and they take a penalty to fortitude saves, and after 48 hours they must submerge in water or suffocate to death. Not fun. The aforementioned sources and the Ancestry Guide have 9 Azarketi heritages to choose from, more than any other ancestry except for Leshy's, and recently tied with dwarves. Ancient scale Azarketi are used to the darkness of the deep ocean. They can see in darkness and have phosphorescent spots on their bodies that can be activated, deactivated, and rearranged at will, and they emit light in a 10-foot radius. Benthic Azarketi have no ill effects from the pressures of deep water, and they are more resistant to cold. Inured Azarketi historically lived in polluted waters. They are more resistant to poison, and it takes 72 hours outside of water before they need to submerge or suffocate. Mist Breath Azarketi are more acclimated to land. Instead of being fully immersed in water, they just need to wipe or mist their skin with water to stay properly hydrated. Their land speed is 25 feet like most other humanoids, but their swim speed is just 15 feet, half that of other Azarketi. Murk-eyed Azarketi are used to murky waters and are great at spotting concealed and hidden creatures. River Azarketi are used to fresh water and the shallower depths of lakes and rivers, and they are extra skilled at swimming thanks to practice with rapids and falls. Spined Azarketi have short-range poison spines that can be launched at enemies. Tactile Azarketi are great at sensing direction in aquatic environments and can detect creatures within 30 feet moving in water, and Tholastic Azarketi are extra good at fighting underwater and don't take the usual penalties for ranged piercing weapons or slashing and bludgeoning melee weapons underwater. Azarketi ancestry feats typically improve Azarketi lore and weapons, affinity for and functionality in water, prowess against Algolthus, and more. The Ancestry Guide adds 6 ancestries: Android, Fletchling, Fleshwarp, Kitsune, Sprite, and Strix. There are also quite a few versatile heritages applicable to many ancestries, which I will discuss nearer the end. Fans of Starfinder will recognize androids as a core race in that system. Androids showed up on Galerion when a spaceship from another world crash-landed in the nation of Numeria. They're made in the image of humans, have great sense of curiosity and rationality, and are usually introverted. They learn through observation, and often have trouble interpreting and expressing emotions. Nanites and artificial fluids manage their organic processes, and the nanites controlling circuitry resemble tattoos on the limbs, head, or neck. Androids don't get old, but they look more artificial over time. After a century or so, an android will willingly release their soul to the afterlife, and their nanites will restore the body over a few weeks for a new soul to enter. They get boosts to dexterity, intelligence, and another ability of their choice, and a flaw to charisma. Their base languages are Common and Androphan, the language of their original planet. They can see in low light, and while they're better at resisting disease, poison, and radiation than others, they are less adept at diplomacy, performance, and sensing people's motives. There are 5 android heritages in the Ancestry Guide. Artisan androids are great at crafting things. Impersonator androids are good at deception and are extra good at impersonating humans. Laborer androids are good at athletics and at carrying more stuff. Polyglot androids know more languages, and warrior androids are trained in all simple and martial weapons. Android ancestry feats typically improve android lore, augmentation of one's own nanites for resistances, dark vision, defenses, attack ability, healing, etc., reaction times, emitting light, holding one's own breath, reviving oneself, and more. Fetchlings look human, but their ancestors were heavily affected by the influence of the shadow plane. They have monochromatic coloration ranging from the palest white to the darkest black and every gray in between. They have reflective eyes with no pupils, and their shadow almost has a mind of its own and rarely reflects their own bodies. Fetchlings adapt to local customs and form tight bonds with friends and neighbors, especially with other fetchlings. Many of them travel. Fetchlings add 8 HP to their health total and have a speed of 25 feet. They get boosts to dexterity and another ability of their choice and no flaws. Their base languages are Common and Shadow Tongue, reflecting their roots on the Shadow Plane, and they can see well in the dark. D&D players can imagine a human answer to the Shadarkai elves. The Ancestry Guide has 5 Fetchling heritages to choose from. Bright fetchlings can emit dim light within 5 feet at will, and parts of their shadow can glow and cast the cantrips Dancing Lights and Light. Deep fetchlings originate from the deepest parts of the shadow plane and get their choice of cold or negative resistance. Liminal fetchlings have a stronger connection to the shadow plane and ethereal plane, and are better at detecting undetected and concealed creatures. Resolute fetchlings are particularly good at resisting emotion effects, and wisp fetchlings are smaller and slighter than others, sometimes appearing insubstantial, and they're trained in acrobatics and are great at squeezing through tight spots and tumbling through an enemy's space. Fetchling ancestry feats typically improve fetchling lore, affinity for darkness, and interactions with shadow, stealth, and more. Fleshwarps are created by animating inanimate flesh, or by using alchemy or magic to alter and transform people's physical being. Traditional flesh warping techniques reshape body and mind in vats of magical reagents, but those transformed or animated by other means are also known by the term. They have a seemingly endless variety of forms, unusually placed limbs, animalistic features like fur or spines, eyes on their hands, extra faces on other parts of their bodies, bones on the outside, and more. Frankenstein's monster is one of the most famous and tamest examples of fleshwarps in pop culture. Outside of the mana wastes in eastern Ghoran, fleshwarps are much rarer than most other ancestries, and their appearance can be off-putting. So, often they live with close family or friends, or otherwise live in ways they can avoid those who would fear or hate them. They will often strive to help other fleshwarps that they meet, however. Fleshwarps add 10 HP to their health total and have a speed of 25 feet. They can be medium or small. They get boosts to Constitution and another ability of their choice and no flaws. Their only base language is Common. They see well in low light and resist disease and poison better than most. The Ancestry Guide and the Impossible Lands book have 7 Fleshwarp heritages to choose from. Cataphract fleshwarps are better able to wear armor, or possibly be more athletic and better help yourself and others don armor. Created fleshwarps were made through occult magic or alchemy. They don't need to eat, can't starve, and are more resistant against disease. Discarded Fleshwarps resist transmutation effects more effectively. Mutated Fleshwarps were transformed by the effects of uncontrolled magic and have more resilient or redundant organs. They recover from persistent bleed damage more effectively. Shape-wrought Fleshwarps had traditional flesh-warping processes inflicted on them and used the memory of that pain to better resist mental damage. Surge-wise Fleshwarps have cilia on their bodies that are sensitive to occult magic. They're trained in the occultism skill and can better identify mental possession, prediction, and scrying spells. And technological Fleshwarps were transformed by tech and are good at resisting emotional effects. Fleshwarp ancestry feats typically improve communication with aberrations, dark vision, intimidation, spewing tentacles, the augmentation of one's body for attacks, defenses, improving senses, swimming, climbing, healing, and more. Kitsune are inspired by the Japanese mythological creature of the same name. They are shape changers connected to the spiritual who have two forms. One is a fox-headed humanoid, and the other is a fox, or a tailless form that more fully resembles a humanoid ancestry, depending on the heritage. They have a trickster reputation due to their love of jokes, stories, and outwitting others. They observe their surrounding society as much as they can so as to fit in, and they often form strong relationships with others. Outside of a very few Kitsune settlements in Tianxia and Avistan, Kitsune are rarer than most. Kitsune add 8 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to charisma and another ability of their choice and have no flaws. Common is their only base language. They can see well in dim light and can change shape as an action into a full humanoid or a fox depending on their heritage. Kitsune have 5 heritages in the Ancestry Guide. The Celestial Envoy Kitsune have a strong divine connection and it can use a reaction to better resist divine effects. They transform into a humanoid, tailless form. Dark Fields Kitsune can visually demoralize others with an unsettling presence, including those who don't know their language, and they can use a reaction to get temporary hit points when a nearby creature is frightened. They transform into a fox. Earthly Wilds Kitsune are more attuned to areas far from urban influence and have especially deadly jaws to attack with. They can also transform into a fox. Empty Sky Kitsune have greater access to certain magic, gaining a feat that lets them daily prepare Daze, Forbidding Ward, or Ghost Sound as a divine at-will cantrip. They transform into a humanoid tailless form. Finally, the Frozen Wind Kitsune hail from colder climes and resist cold well. They also transform into a humanoid tailless form. Kitsune ancestry feats tend to improve Kitsune lore and claw use, innate magic, using and recognizing shape-changing, use of tricks and pranks, and more. Sprites are tiny fae, much smaller even than halflings and gnomes, originally from the First World, home plane of the fae. In their home plane, they are effectively immortal and reincarnate into different fae at the end of their life. But some come to the material plane out of curiosity, exile, a desire for excitement, and a myriad of other reasons. Sprites born in the material plane, including player characters, don't automatically get flight-capable wings, but can possibly develop them over time. Their natural curiosity and whimsy can make people think they're scatterbrained or the prime suspect when magical hijinks ensue. If they don't travel, they might live in areas of great magic or great beauty. Sprites add 6 HP to their health totals and have a speed of 20 feet. They get boosts to dexterity, intelligence, and another ability of their choice, and they get a flaw to strength. Their base languages are Common and Sylvan. They see well in dim light, and all their unarmed and weapon strikes are magical. The Ancestry Guide has 6 Sprite heritages. Draxies are related to fairy dragons and can communicate telepathically with any creature they touch as long as they share a language. Griggs have the hindquarters of a cricket and usually like art and music. They can cast Ghost Sound as a primal innate cantrip and are better at jumping. Luminous sprites naturally shed light like a torch and can extinguish, rekindle, or change the color of the light as an action. Melixies have features of bees, butterflies, or other sweet-loving insects. They can interact with arthropods, asking them questions, getting answers, and using the diplomacy skill to make impressions and requests. And most bees, butterflies, moths, and beetles start indifferent or even friendly to them. Nycteras have bat-like features, and they can sense undetected creatures with hearing at double the normal range and are better at hearing them close up. Pixies are just larger than other sprites. They are roughly halfling size. They are small instead of tiny. Sprite ancestry feats typically improve wings, fey magic, especially illusions, affinity with animals, musical distraction, and more. Strix, also known as Itari, are avian humanoids with wings sprouting from their back and talons replacing humanoid feet. They're taller than most humans, but are light for their size, befitting a flying being. They only live about 40 years on average. They typically live in tribes or small bands led by a female leader and located at high points in their home region like mountains, tall trees, and cliffs. Most live in and around the Avastani nation of Cheliacs. Within their groups they are spiritual and compassionate, but surrounding humanoid settlements often misunderstand and demonize them, so they see a more vengeful side if they hurt the Strix's own. Often, Strix convey their people's history through storytelling and poetry. Strix add 8 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to dexterity and another ability and have no flaws. Base languages are Common and Strix. They can see well in dim light, and their wings at least allow them to horizontally jump further. Ancestry feats at higher levels let them hone their abilities for actual flight. The Ancestry Guide has 5 Strix heritages. Night Glider Strix can see in darkness. Predator Strix can use their talons in combat. Scavenger Strix are trained in survival and can forage for food in the wilds particularly well. Shoreline Strix are more athletic and much better at fighting underwater, and Songbird Strix are good at singing and impersonating voices. Strix ancestry feats typically improve Strix lore wings both for flight and for other uses, use of one's voice, avenging one's allies, fighting humans, transformation, and more. The Mwangi Expanse, which covers parts of the continent of Ghoran, inspired by sub-Saharan Africa, adds 6 more ancestries: Anadi, Conrasu, Gnoll, Goloma, Grippli, and Shisk. Anadi are sentient spiders the size of a human. Because historically most people get freaked out by human-sized spiders and false rumors and stereotypes still persist in the universe, Anadi developed the ability to transform into a human form and back. They have a strong sense of community and prefer to avoid conflict even in a situation unfair to them, but they will fight to defend those that they hold dear. Anadi add 8 HP to their total health, and they have a speed of 25 feet. They get boosts to dexterity, wisdom, and another ability of their choice, and a flaw to constitution. Their base languages are Anadi and Mwangi. Their spider shape has fangs usable in combat, and they can change shape as an action. In human form, they cannot use your ancestry's unarmed attacks like fangs. In spider form, they're not flat-footed while climbing, but they cannot use held items and can only use spider limbs to cast spells with somatic components, weave silk or webbing, or simple actions like opening a door. The Mwangi Expanse sourcebook has 5 heritages for the Anadi. An adaptive Anadi can transform into a different common humanoid besides human, and can choose ancestry feats for that form. Polychromatic Anadi are covered in colorful hairs that create vibrant patterns and might even show up in human form. They're natural performers and can make impressions with the performance skill instead of diplomacy. Snaring Anadi can grapple and trip foes with their spider fangs. Spindly Anadi have long limbs in both forms and get a 30-foot speed, and venomous Anadi can add venom to their spider fangs and do poison damage. Anadi ancestry feats typically improve Anadi lore, use of webs, aiding allies, interactions with arachnids, use of fangs and venom, shape-shifting, magic use, and more. The Conrasu is perhaps the weirdest ancestry in Pathfinder 2e. Basically, they're sapient pieces of cosmic force or spiritual essence shaped like spheres of light, darkness, or space, who make exoskeletons of living wood with which to interact with the world around them and maintain their integrity. This wood hardens with age, requiring them to grow new limbs and leave the old ones frozen in place. They look for guidance from aeons, lawful, neutral, immortal caretakers of reality and the natural order of balance. Different types of Conrasus might care for others, build things and direct others, or fix problems and combat threats. Conrasus add 10 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to Constitution, Wisdom, and another ability of their choice, and a flaw to Charisma. Their base languages are Mwangi and Rasu. They can heal themselves a small amount, increasing with level, with 10 minutes of exposure to direct sunlight. There are 5 Conrasu heritages in the Mwangi Expanse sourcebook. Rite of Invocation gets an innate arcane or occult cantrip, Cast at Will. Rite of Knowing Conrasus can tap into the lawful neutral plane of Axis once per day and more accurately recall knowledge. Rite of Light can apply their sunlight healing to an adjacent ally. Rite of Passage Conrasus ignore difficult terrain due to undergrowth and are better at using acrobatics to balance in a forest. And Rite of Reinforcement has an especially thick exoskeleton that effectively functions as medium plate armor. Conrasu Ancestry feats typically improve Conrasu lore and weapon use, combat defenses, healing by photosynthesis, skill use, growth in size, use of certain innate spells, and more. Gnolls are humanoid hyenas. D&D players will be very familiar with these. In some places they're known to be slavers, in other regions like the Mwangi Expanse they're not, but they remain devoted to pragmatism and practicality and will pursue any advantage that gives them a decisive victory in a fight. They don't waste time with honor, mercy, or even cruelty. They live in matriarchal clans ruled by a council of female elders advised by their authorities on spirituality and relevant knowledge. They venerate their ancestors and consume their dead and worthy foes as a sign of reverence and respect. Outsiders that they befriend are adopted as honorary packmates. Gnolls add 8 HP to their health total and have a speed of 25 feet. They get boosts to strength, intelligence, and another ability of their choice with a flaw in wisdom. Their base languages are Common and Gnoll. They can see well in dim light and can do good damage with their bites. The Mwangi Expanse book has just 4 Gnoll heritages. Ant Gnolls are the size of halflings and are great at deception, especially when claiming innocence of a deed and using deception for initiative rolls. Great Gnolls are very large and powerful. They get 10 points from their ancestry instead of 8 and are good at shoving and tripping enemies. Sweet Breath Gnolls are more diplomatic, and the smell of their breath helps make a good impression with others. And Witch Gnolls can cast the Ghost Sound cantrip as an occult innate spell and are great at using just their voice to make diversions and impersonate others. Essentially, they're the ventriloquists and voice actors of Gnolls. Gnoll Ancestry feats typically improve Gnoll lore and weapon use, affinity with hyenas, teamwork, use of the jaw and nose, hyena laughter, ancestral magic, and more. The Goloma is likely the next weirdest ancestry in this game. A Goloma is a humanoid with rough skin ranging from earth tones to white, gray, or black. They have chitin on their fingers and feet, and their face is almost a chitinous wedge-shaped mask with the mouth and jaw below it. They have 8 gelatinous eyes, 4 on each side, and coating the back of the head and neck is black hair in which thousands of tiny eyes glow and squirm as they peer out. While they can handle themselves in a fight, they typically view themselves as historically prey of 2-eyed creatures. They're always vigilant, to the point other ancestries might view them as paranoid. They're great at wide-scale observations, but less so at differentiating specific things, which sometimes leads to them confusing friend and foe. Golomas add 8 HP to their health total, and they have a speed of 30 feet. They get a boost to wisdom and another ability of their choice and no flaws. Their base languages are Goloma and Mwangi. Their multiple eyes let them use the Seek action to look for creatures in 2 areas instead of 1. The Mwangi Expanse sourcebook has 5 Goloma heritages. Farsight Golomas can see well in dim light. Frightful Golomas are naturally intimidating and can intimidate a creature with just a look. Insightful Golomas are good at sensing people's motives in any attempts to lie to them. And the chitin on the hands of vicious Golomas is sharp enough to form claws used as unarmed weapons. And vigilant Golomas can cast Detect Magic and are extra good at detecting magical traps. Goloma Ancestry feats typically improve Goloma lore, vigilance and perception, catching details, resisting fear, and more. Gripplis are humanoid frogs about 2 to 3 feet in height. D&D players will be reminded of bullywugs and grung. Gripplis are typically reclusive hunter-gatherers who reshape the environment to suit their needs without harming it. Typically, they live in small villages that maintain relationships with many other villages for communal cooperation, even though some will come out to trade and build ties with neighboring peoples. And a few even live in cities. Gripplis add 6 HP to their total health and have a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to dexterity, wisdom, and another ability of their choice, and a flaw to strength. Their base languages are Common and Grippli, and they can see well in low light. There are just 4 Grippli heritages in the Mwangi Expanse book. Poison-hide Gripplis have poisonous skin that damages those who touch them, similar to poison dart frogs. Snap-tongue Gripplis have almost prehensile tongues that can simple interactions and cast touch spells as long as the action doesn't require fingers or significant dexterity. Sticky-toed Gripplis are good at climbing and at avoiding being shoved, tripped, or disarmed because of their sticky toes and fingers. And wind-webbed Gripplis can negate fall damage with their webbed fingers and toes as long as at least one hand is free. Grippli Ancestry feats typically improve Grippli lore and weapon use, heritage abilities, maneuvering and fighting in nature, jumping, dealing with poisons, and more. Shisks are also typically reclusive, and they look like dark-skinned humans except for bony quills emerging from their heads, their backs, and their limbs. They rarely compete for resources or come out to trade since they typically subsist on vegetables and insects. They have hollow bones and 2 narrow fangs on their upper jaw. Shisks are keepers of knowledge, even using information as currency. They pass down histories orally and musically rather than in writing. They're wary of outsiders, even of other Shisks, and have gone to war with neighboring villages over secrets their neighbors possess. Though when convinced to cooperate, Shisk sages combining their knowledge can result in great mysteries quickly being solved. Shisks add 8 HP to their health total and have a speed of 25 feet. They give boosts to intelligence and another ability with no flaws. Their base languages are Mongi and Shisk, and they can see in darkness. The Mongi Expanse book has 5 Shisk heritages. Lore Keeper Shisks get a lore skill and another skill based in intelligence or wisdom, and become experts in those 2 at level 5. Quill Coat Shisks can break off their quills in the flesh of a melee attacker as a defense mechanism once per day, more often with certain feats. Spellkeeper Shisks get an occult or primal innate cantrip to use. Stone Step Shisks are excellent at traversing difficult terrain made of stone, earth, or rubble, and Strong Gut Shisks can go a week without food, and progression of poisons and diseases in their bodies is slowed by 50%. Shisk Ancestry feats typically improve Shisk lore, the use of the bony quills, recalling knowledge of many topics, remembering sound by rote, navigation, climbing, heat resistance, maneuvering underground, magical secrecy, and more. The book Guns and Gears gave us the Automaton. D&D fans will be reminded strongly of Eberron's Warforged. In universe, automatons were the last attempt of the ancient Gistka Imperium to bolster their ranks and avoid being conquered by Osirion, but it was too little, too late, and the automatons were left to fend for themselves. They were created by implanting Gistkan people's life, mind, and soul into constructs of metal and stone. Over the millennia, the strongest will maintain their identities, while most of the rest remember little of their former lives. Distrust of others is common, either due to outliving everyone or to people hunting them for money or research. There are reports of newer automatons elsewhere, though. Automatons add 8 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They can be the size of humans or halflings. They get boosts to strength and another ability of their choice and no flaws. Their base languages are Common, or perhaps Gistka, and Utopian. They see well in dim light. As constructs, they need not eat, drink, or sleep, though they still need to rest in the form of a 2-hour standby state. Thanks to the life energy from their cores, however, they are like humanoids in all other major ways and don't have a construct's normal immunities. Guns and Gears gives us 4 automaton heritages. Hunter automatons resemble pack hunters and were designed for scout or assassin purposes. They can run on all 4s to increase their speed to 30 feet. Mage automatons tap into their magical cores more and get 1 innate arcane cantrip. Sharpshooter automatons are optimized for ranged combat and can use 1 or 2 actions on a turn to aim and make a single shot more accurate. Think like HK-47 from Knights of the Old Republic. And warrior automatons are optimized for melee combat, have a more damaging punch, and can more easily do lethal harm with unarmed attacks. Automaton Ancestry feats typically improve automaton lore, combat and defense capabilities, heritage abilities, healing oneself, planar teleportation, enhancing abilities, and more. The Grand Bazaar book gives us the Poppet, essentially a sentient construct similar to a doll. They range from 1 to 3 feet tall and are made from cloth, wicker, wood, or other materials. Poppets are normally made as helpers and might even be familiars. Player character Poppets are among the 1/10 of 1% who achieve sapience. They maintain some of their original drive to aid others. Despite being constructed, they still eat, sleep, and breathe like humanoids. If you want to play as the Velveteen Rabbit, Woody from Toy Story, or Chucky, this is for you. Poppets add 6 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to Constitution, Charisma, and another ability of their choice, but they have a flaw in Dexterity. Common is their only base language. They see in darkness and are more resistant to death effects, disease, poison, paralysis, getting drained, and getting sickened, but they are weak to fire, taking extra fire damage equal to 1/3 their level. The Grand Bazaar gives us 5 Poppet heritages. Ghost Poppets have a bit of life essence from someone who died and have resistance to negative damage. Stuffed Poppets have little inside them apart from some kind of stuffing and take no fall damage. Toy Poppets look a lot like children's toys and are tiny instead of small. You can take cover in the space of a larger creature, and you need to be in the space of a larger creature to attack it. Wind-up Poppets are small, clockwork constructs who don't need food or water as long as they wind themselves up each day. And Wish-born Poppets were wished to life by powerful magic or the love of an innocent child, and they are good at resisting emotion and fear effects. Poppet ancestry feats typically improve mobility, looking innocuous, fire resistance, or rather losing that fire weakness, aiding friends, distracting others, repairing things and oneself, affinity with inanimate objects, and more. Book of the Dead as the skeleton, usually one of the most classic undead enemies in fantasy games. In this universe, skeleton adventurers were very skilled or powerful in their former lives, and may or may not have some memories of their former lives. They often dress ornately, or carve or paint themselves to show a sense of self and let the living know that they're not your normal undead. They add 6 HP to their total health and a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to dexterity, charisma, interestingly, and another ability of their choice and a flaw to intelligence. Their base languages are Common and Necril. Instead of eating food or drinking blood, you can collect bones to help yourself mend. You also get basic undead benefits, which in summary are low light vision, immunity to negative damage and positive healing, getting healed by negative effects, getting harmed by positive damage, immunity to death effects, a small bonus to saves against disease and poison, and a hunger for something related to your undead state, in a skeleton's case, bones, as mentioned earlier. There are 4 skeleton ancestries, all in Book of the Dead. Compact skeletons are usually from smaller beings like gnomes and halflings, and are good at squeezing through tight spaces. Fodder skeletons are from humans, elves, and similar beings, and channel necromantic energy especially well, adding 5 feet to their base speed. Monstrous skeletons are from beasts and monstrous humanoids, and gain claws, horns, a tail, or wings with which to attack for 1d6 damage. Sturdy skeletons come from tougher ancestries like dwarves and orcs. They add 10 HP instead of 6, and they don't die as easily as others thanks to the Die Hard feat. Skeleton ancestries typically improve transforming and manipulating your own bones, affinity with other undead, memories of a past life, defenses, necromantic magic, and more. The most recently released ancestries come from the Impossible Lands book, talking about the places in eastern Ghoran and parts of Kasmaran. There are 5 here: Ghoran, Kashrishi, Nagaji, Venara, and Vishkanya. Ghorans were born out of an attempt by a renegade druid to create an edible plant that would thrive in the most inhospitable places and feed his homeland. It worked a little bit too well. They developed sentience and mobility and eventually adopted humanoid forms to dissuade other beings from eating them. Their bodies seem to have leaves, vines, and/or thorns, and their faces have petals like flowers. They produce a seed every 20 years or so that takes in the old soul, breaks down the old body, and creates a new body in 1 to 2 months. Some of the oldest memories are lost, and their personality changes a little bit in the process. They are cooperative amongst themselves, work with and trade with others in their homeland, and are more isolationist elsewhere unless they have a wanderlust that compels them to travel. Ghorans add 8 HP to their health totals and have a base speed of 25 feet. They get boosts to Constitution and another ability of their choice, and no flaws. Their base languages are Common and Sylvan. They can see in low light, and they can feed via photosynthesis, starving after a week without sunlight. There are just 4 Ghoran heritages, all in Impossible Lands. Ancient Ash Ghorans remember much and have training in an extra skill. Enchanting Lily Ghorans smell sweet and are good at diplomacy and making impressions on those who can smell their fragrance. Strong Oak Ghorans are covered in bark and have sturdy legs. They balance well and are great at resisting attempts to trip, grapple, restrain, or knock them prone. And Thorned Rose Ghorans have thorns that break off and slice up those who hit them in melee. Ghoran ancestry traits typically improve Ghoran lore and weapons, memories from past lives, affinity for and manipulation of plants, thorns, healing by photosynthesis, use of fragrance and poison, and more. A Kashrishi is essentially a halfling-sized rhinoceros with strong empathic senses and one or more crystalline horns. They have great strength for their size and occasionally have insectile features. They can sense people's emotions through proximity. Kashrishi tend to be honest, kind, hospitable, and tactful without deception, partly because malicious action results in emotions uncomfortable for them to feel. More often than not, Kashrishi become adventurers because unfavorable circumstances took them away from home, although some do get a desire to travel. They add 8 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. They get boosts to Constitution and another ability of their choice, and no flaws. Common and Kashrishi are their base languages. They can judge the emotional state of others within 15 feet, with more specifics delivered through touch if there is an emotional connection. This lets Kashrishi sense the presence of non-mindless creatures nearby and makes them good at sensing others' motives. Their horns also glow with dim light up to 10 feet away when they use magic or other features of their ancestry. There are 5 Kashrishi ancestries in the Impossible Lands book. Athamasi Kashrishi has small secondary arms and make them good at climbing. Lithosi Kashrishi are great swimmers. Nascent Kashrishi get an extra Kashrishi ancestry feat. Trogloshi Kashrishi lack pigment and have particularly clear horns, and it shines with double or even quadruple the radiance of most other Kashrishi horns and can be activated at will. And Zyloshi Kashrishi have strong enough neck muscles to use their horn as a natural weapon. Kashrishi ancestry feats typically improve heritage abilities, telepathy, use of the horn, mental strength, innate magic, reviving yourself, healing ally ailments, and more. Nagaji are, for the most part, of people with humanoid bodies and snake-like heads, though there's a lot of variance as well. D&D players may be reminded of Yuan-Ti, but far less evil. They're originally from Nagajor in southern Tianxia, but have spread beyond to Vudra, Kasmaran, and Ghoran. Most of their communities are matriarchal, ruled by Nagas, and are usually quite different from each other. Nagaji are known for their devotion to community, faith, ideals, or other concepts. They aspire to fulfill their ideal of their place in the universe, and they may hold those with significantly different beliefs in disdain. Nagaji add 10 HP to their health total and have a speed of 25 feet. They get boosts to strength and another ability of their choice and no flaws. Their base languages are Common and Nagaji. They can see in dim light, and they have fangs with which they can attack. There are 5 Nagaji heritages, all in Impossible Lands. Hooded Nagaji have the heads of spitting cobras and can spit venom a short distance. Sacred Nagaji have the lower bodies of snakes and the upper bodies and heads of beautiful humans. They get a tail attack instead of fangs and are good at resisting being grabbed, tripped, restrained, or knocked prone. Titan Nagaji are natural warriors and have strong scales that function like plate armor. Venom Shield Nagaji are resistant to poison, and Whip Fang Nagaji have long, flexible necks which lets them bite enemies within 10 feet. Nagaji ancestry feats typically improve Nagaji lore and innate magic, affinity with snakes, venom, shedding skin, resistance to emotion effects and mind reading, disruption of people's minds and concentration, and more. Venaras are monkey-like humanoids with a penchant for curiosity and mischief. They typically worship the god Ragdia. While they love fun and adventure, they seek balance and comfort. They don't often go to extremes, and they consider the consequences of their actions. Any mischief is typically done with good intentions, often with the goal of helping their community in some way, or helping to get some people to loosen up and find a sense of humor. Venaras often look to tales of heroes and their ancestors for guidance, and they may travel for enlightenment and escape from something or something else. Imagine Sun Wukong, but not as chaotic on average. Venaras add 6 HP to their health total, and they have a 25-foot speed. They have boosts to dexterity and another ability of their choice and no flaws. Their base languages are Common and Venara, and they can use their prehensile tails like a free hand unless it's to hold items or an action requires manual dexterity or fingers. There are just 4 Venara heritages in Impossible Lands. Bandagi Venaras are the most common and move easily through crowds. Lakyan Venaras historically served their patron god's more violent enemy, Lakya, and can attack with their jaws and subsist on raw meat. Ragdian Venaras are descended from Ragdia's personal creations and get an innate divine cantrip, and Wajagand Venara more easily resist emotion effects. Venara Ancestry feats typically improve Venara lore and weapons, mobility, especially climbing, pranks, tail use, changing size, defenses, and more. Finally, we have the Vishkanya. Vishkanyas are also humanoids with snake traits, but historically they've been opposed to Nagas. They look more human than Nagaji, but their snake-like eyes, tongue, and scales are more apparent up close. They originate from an island under Vudrani jurisdiction called Jalmarai. Women are taller than men, and neither really stops growing throughout their lives. They can interbreed with other ancestries. Their communities are tight-knit, and occupations tend to better the greater community, though preservation of culture and records is of high importance. Vishkanyas may go adventuring to benefit their community, or to spread their culture and promote intercultural understanding. They add 8 HP to their health total and have a 25-foot speed. Like Venaras, Vishkanyas have boosts to dexterity and another ability of their choice with no flaws. Base languages are Common and Vishkanya. They see in dim light and carry toxins in their blood and saliva harmful to all but themselves that can be used once per day. There are 6 Vishkanya heritages in the Impossible Lands book. Elusive Vishkanyas are extra flexible. They escape restraint more easily and squeeze through tight spots faster. Keen Venom Vishkanya can apply their venom to a weapon as they draw it. Old Blood Vishkanyas are direct descendants from the founders of their homeland. They are trained in the society skill and navigate the streets or the upper classes with ease. Prismatic Vishkanyas are performers who can use their shimmering scales to enhance their performances. Scale Keeper Vishkanyas can quickly recall knowledge, and venom-resistant Vishkanyas are extra resistant to poison. Vishkanya Ancestry feats typically improve Vishkanya lore and weapons, venom use, healing and restorative effects, seeing in darkness, social adeptness, performance, and more. We'll finish with versatile heritages. Versatile heritages can be applied to almost any ancestry available. You can pick one of these instead of one of an ancestry's listed heritages, and you get a neat trait and an extra list of ancestry feats from which to pick. There are 16 in all from the Advanced Player's Guide, Ancestry Guide, Dark Archive, and Rage of Elements. 18 if your GM counts half-elf and half-orc as applicable to more than human ancestry. Because of the sheer amount of variance that each of these can have, I won't be doing the silly pictures. Also, I only have 3 colors of dry erase marker, so there's that. Aasimars from the Advanced Player's Guide have celestial ancestry that manifests in the form of glowing eyes, a halo of light, a particularly pleasing voice or scent, and or something else. They're stereotyped as having strong will, magic, or great beauty. Aasimars typically value freedom, civility, and justice. While they are not by default good or pious, their celestial ancestry has an influence that may drive them towards such ideals, though evil Aasimars do exist. They get low light vision or dark vision if their ancestry also has low light vision. And Aasimar feats deal with Aasimar lineages from several celestials, halo effects, healing and buffing, gaining holy wings, resisting divine threats, and more. Aphorites from the Ancestry Guide have ancestry from Axis, the plane of pure law. The first Aphorites served to enact the will of Axis, but over the years, as they increased among mortals, they have undeniably become their own masters. Almost all have metallic eyes, hair, and complexion, or perhaps crystalline motes or glowing symbols across the skin. They trend toward lawful outlooks and often pursue work as artisans, lawyers, diplomats, hunters, soldiers, investigators, and more. Aphorites get low light vision or dark vision if their ancestry also has it. Aphorite feats typically improve lore of and affinity with Axis, social interaction, seeing in darkness, receiving healing, crafting, enhancement of combat and defense, use of your body's crystalline dust, imposition of order, and more. Beastkin from the Ancestry Guide are sort of like weird beasts, able to partly or fully transform into an animal and keep a balance with their humanoid side, but without going crazy on full moons and not necessarily weak to silver. They often find affinity with other beastkin and were creatures with the same inherent animal, but in other settlements they may hide their true nature due to stigma. Beastkin characters have an inherent animal, your choice of bat, eagle, shark, spider, tyrannosaurus, wasp, wolf, or something similar, and the ability to change shape into a hybrid form, that is, a mix of humanoid and your inherent animal, and back into humanoid form. You also get a natural weapon in the form of your bestial jaws. Beastkin feats typically improve transformation, the senses, innate magic, resistance to disease and poison, sharing werebeast-like powers with others, teamwork, and more. Changelings from the Advanced Player's Guide are the children of hag mothers and humanoid fathers, resembling their father's lineage at first, other than their heterochromia, before magical traits from their mother arise later. They usually have to decide to embrace or resist the call, a psychic urge to find and join their mother's coven and become a hag. Changelings get low light vision, or if their ancestry has that, dark vision. Changeling feats typically improve abilities from the mother's type of hag, knowledge of changeling and hags, dark vision, innate magic, mental defenses, hair manipulation, stealth, defense of others, and more. Dhampirs from the Advanced Player's Guide can be children of a vampire and immortal, the child of a woman who became a vampire while pregnant, or someone on whom vampiric curses were imposed during infancy via other means. They are living, but they have a ghostly pallor and the gaze, incisors, and presence of a vampire, and that doesn't sit well with many, despite the charm that they also have. They live roughly as long as an elf and have more difficulty reproducing than most. Dhampirs have low light vision, or if their ancestry has that, dark vision, and, like undead, are healed by negative energy and harmed by positive energy. Dhampir feats improve vampire lore, abilities from one's vampiric forebear, seeing in darkness, use of fangs, natural charm, affinity with certain animals like bats, rats, and wolves, gaining vitality from another's pain or blood, innate magic, affinity for darkness, dealing with and killing undead, and several more. These things do a lot. If you want to play Blade, pick this one. Duskwalkers from the Advanced Player's Guide are reincarnated souls originally created by psychopomps to serve the goddess Pharasma, goddess of death and the afterlife. But nowadays they have more freedom of choice. They have gray or blue skin and are mostly from humanoid ancestries, but there are exceptions which have traits of their non-humanoid ancestry. They are formed in places with holy connections to death, start life as adolescents, and cannot have biological children. Often they're driven to make good of their reincarnation. Duskwalkers have low light vision, or if their ancestry had that, dark vision, and they can never become undead in body or spirit. Feats tend to improve Duskwalker lore and weapon use, abilities gained from how your previous incarnation died, abilities from interacting with certain psychopomps, seeing in darkness, fighting undead, intimidation, sensing the life force of others, attacks, defenses, innate magic, traveling to and from Pharasma's realm of the Boneyard, and more. Ganzi from the Ancestry Guide have the energies of the Maelstrom, the plane of creation and chaos, infusing their very being. They typically have great energy and a penchant for mischief, spontaneity, and nonconformity. They have huge variance in appearance, although a small majority have serpentine tails with feathers and scales here and there. Often they choose a heart name for themselves in addition to their given name that describes their true selves. Ganzi are resistant to acid, electricity, or sonic damage, determined randomly at the start of each day, and are good at resisting another's control. Ganzi feats typically improve creativity, seeing in darkness, use of a tail or wings, defenses, flexibility, innate magic, abilities gained from chaotic ancestors, and more. I'll save Pathfinder's 7 kinds of geniekin for last, because I want to do them all together, so let's go to Reflections. From the Dark Archive book, a reflection is a duplicate of someone else existing in the world, drawn from a mirror or created by magical spells. Some fit the stereotype of wanting to replace their originals, and there is a mechanic for doing so, but others just want to forge their own paths in life and find a way to belong. Those not mirror images of their original might have a swirled mark on their body somewhere. Sometimes a progenitor knows of their reflection and mentors them. Reflections can impersonate their progenitor without making deception checks unless they interact with people who know them or do something out of character for the person. Reflection feats typically improve deception, occult magic, any lore regarding the progenitor's ancestry, abilities related to the reflection's creation, frightening others, resisting mental effects, impersonating your progenitor, altering your appearance, creating a reflection of a foe, and more. While Aasimars are humanoids with celestial ancestry, Tieflings from the Advanced Player's Guide have fiendish traits in their bloodline. Tieflings have several possible lineages, depending on what kind of fiend that enter their bloodline. They could face stigma from those around them, even being mistaken for actual fiends, and ill treatment might drive them into evil, but their bloodline does not affect their morality, and they can run the gamut of good and neutral as well. Horns, a forked tongue, a tail, hooves, or other traits are common among tieflings. Tieflings are commonly self-reliant and only have a few close friends, as they often face discrimination. They gain low light vision or dark vision if their ancestry has that already. Tiefling feats typically improve abilities gained from their lineage, fiend lore, fiendish physical characteristics, disguising oneself, inherent magic, charm, defenses, attacks, summoning fiends, affinity for your fiendish nature, and more. There are several equivalents of D&D's Genasi in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. 7 types of geniekin in all, as of the newly released Rage of Elements book, and all but the newest 2 are from the Ancestry Guide. Ifrits are similar to fire genasi and are descended from creatures of elemental fire, most commonly Ifrit, salamanders, and magma dragons. They often have lineages related to light, cinders, or lava. They have skin colors like those of fire or coals or brass, and hair like flame in color and sometimes in substance. Ifrits do well in high temperatures and prefer loose, breathable clothes, and they highly value personal freedom. They are resistant to fire and heat effects. Ifrit feats typically improve traits from lineages, elemental planar lore, genie weapon use, seeing in darkness, the use of one's own wit and charm, affinity for and use of fire, defenses, innate magic, battlefield control, disarming, and more. Oreads are the rough equivalent of Earth Genasi. They are descended from elemental earth creatures like Shaitans or crystal dragons, and they have lineages related to crystal, mud, or dust. They are typically patient and observant and value peace. Skin can have the color of earth, stone, crystal, or metal, and they often have crystal or rock in place of hair, and eyes like gemstones. They prefer clothing that is sturdy yet expressive. Often, Oreads are steadfast, honorable, and value keeping one's word, and they defend their own fiercely. Oreads can see in low light, or if their ancestry already has that, in the dark. Oread feats typically improve lineage abilities, elemental lore, genie weapon use, crafting, repairs, connection to earth and stone, defenses, innate magic, summoning, transformation, and more. Sylphs are like air genasi. They're descended from beings of elemental air like Ginny, cloud dragons, and the like, or were born in places prone to storms. They're intense, lively, and they march to the beat of their own drum. Their coloration runs the full range of sky colors. They might be accompanied by a light breeze or have skin with swirling patterns, cool temperature, or static. They often have a habit of watchfulness and gathering information so as to keep connected with the world around them. Sylphs get low light vision, or if their ancestry has that, dark vision. Sylph feats include elemental lore and genie weapon use, traits from certain lineages, seeing in the dark, mobility including flight, withstanding falls and storms, defenses, innate magic, holding one's breath, summoning, and more. Undines are like water genasi, the descendants of beings of elemental water like Marids, brine dragons, and such, or born in places with a strong affinity to water. They have shifting phases in their lives, yet structure is still important to them, and they often identify with aspects of water like ocean tides or the tranquility of a lake. Coloration can match anything found in a body of water, and they often like water-related occupations. Undines get a 10-foot swim speed, can breathe in air and water, and can make bludgeoning and slashing weapon attacks underwater with no problem. Undine feats typically improve lineage abilities, elemental lore, and genie weapons, affinity for fresh or salt water, defenses, mobility, transforming fire to steam underwater, innate magic, summoning elementals, stealth underwater, and more. Now, Sulis are pretty interesting. Sulis have the influence of fire, air, earth, and water together, suffusing their being, and are often the descendants of Jan, genies of all 4 of those elements. They start off fully resembling their mortal ancestry until adolescence, when outward signs might include eyes that glow or shift color, a metallic sheen on the skin, physical traits on one side of the body, or something else. They're often social and want themselves or those dear to them to be remembered. Sulis value truth and inner strength over base conformity. Most don't settle permanently in just one place. Like several other geniekin, Sulis can see in low light, or, if their ancestry has that ability, in darkness. Suli feats typically improve lineage abilities, elemental lore, genie weapons, use of different elements for attacks and defense, innate magic, other defenses, and more. Finally, the recent Rage of Elements book added 2 other kinds of geniekin. Ardande are scions of the elemental plane of wood, descended from Kizadar genies, dryads, or forest dragons, or perhaps born in deeply forested areas. They have skin tones matching the colors of the forest, and often have hair and facial hair made of vines, ivy, petals, or leaves. Sometimes they're even covered in bark, wood, or moss. They are significantly rarer than other geniekin, as the plane of wood only recently reappeared in universe. Ardandes heavily value community, family, and others close to them. Like most other geniekin, they have low light vision or dark vision if their ancestry already had that. Ardande feats typically improve lineage abilities, elemental lore, genie weapon use, dark vision defenses dealing with and utilizing plants, photosynthesis, crafting, especially with wood, sensing things on or under the ground, innate magic defenses, summoning elementals, and more. And, descended from Zuhraz and other denizens of the recently reappeared plane of metal, we have the Talos, no relation to the Elder Scrolls. Taloses have metallic physical traits with skin tones matching all possible colors of metal and hair matching color and texture of metal as well. They can have a quick wit and a natural charisma, but sometimes they have trouble connecting with other people, and they tend to have an independent nature. Most pursue careers related to metal, performance, or diplomacy. Taloses are resistant to electricity and can cast and detect metal as an arcane innate cantrip. Talos feats typically improve lineage abilities, elemental lore, genie weapon use, dark vision, defenses, improving attacks, especially unarmed attacks, innate magic, especially regarding magnetism, summoning elementals, and more. And with new rage of elements, I think it would be really, really cool if they edited the Sully to include wood and metal as possible elements to tap into. Right now it's just fire, air, water, and earth. But if they included the others, that would make it especially interesting, I think. And finally, we're through everything. If you've actually watched this entire video and stuck with me this whole time, thank you so much. Hopefully this gives you the gist of the ancestries and heritages available currently in Pathfinder 2e as of the release of Rage of Elements. For more info, check out the links to archives of Nethys in the description, or better yet, actually buy the books and support Paizo. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments section below. I'll get back to you. Check out my link tree in the description. Follow me on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, Mastodon, Instagram, co-host, and Hive. Once again, I'm Daniel, the Cross Cultural Nerd, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.